we're here to review the Star Wars canon novel written by Timothy Zahn, Thrawn. Just so our listeners on Channel 1138 and on YouTube know how this is going to work, is the first half of the show is going to be non-spoilers, so you can listen if you don't want to be spoiled, and we'll go over just a basic review of the novel and why you should or shouldn't buy this novel on either the novel or the audiobook. And then we'll get into the spoiler review. So I guess first things first, I'm Saje from Wastelands, and joined by Dominic Jones and Ben Hart from Star Wars Underworld. How's it going, guys?
Hi, I'm Ben Hart.
And I'm Dominic Jones.
I run a barbecue restaurant.
Yeah, I'm Canadian.
That's all you need to know about us.
I'm Canadian, y'all.
Oh yeah,
Y'all?
I'm from Mississippi. That's what. Just gonna go grab a 6-pack of Molson and drink some maple syrup, eat some back bacon. Bunch of hosers.
You sound like the guys from Fargo.
I'm just trying to run through all the Canadian stereotypes I can think of really quickly.
Oh my goodness.
Don't get me started. That was totally put on me the other morning, and it went on for, this is an in-person thing too, and I got so frustrated that I literally, they even dove into Donald Trump stuff, and I had to leave the breakfast. I couldn't do it.
Well, China.
Fake news.
Let's get right into this, gentlemen. What version of the book do you guys have? Because there's a few different versions.
I have the hardcover,
and I have the audiobook.
I too have the audiobook. Now, Dominic, were you lucky enough to score one of the black hardcovers, or is it just the traditional white cover?
It's just the traditional one. I was gonna try and get one at Celebration, but then Celebration happened, and there were other things that I'd rather do than wait in line to buy a book, to pay extra for a book that I can buy for a regular price. That's exactly the same on the inside. So I decided I'd just wait until after Celebration and go to the bookstore like a normal person and just pick up a hardcover.
Yeah, I had grand plans going into Celebration. I was going to get the book, get the Celebration exclusive, get it signed by Timothy Zahn. And then I went to the booth a couple times, actually, and the last time I went, I realized that it would take upwards of probably 2 hours on, I think, Sunday to get the Timothy Zahn autographed.
And weren't they sold out by that point of the black cover?
They were rationing them out, I think.
Oh, okay. They were out of the pins is what they were out of. So there was some special Thrawn pin that you could get. I remember seeing on social media, they said they saved 20 for the last day or something. It was
kind of like us.
Come on, guys, you can do better. Says a guy who.
So I saved reading Thrawn until after Celebration because I was wanting to get that book, and then I realized I'm not going to do that. So I just downloaded the audiobook and listened to it, and it was great.
Yeah. Yeah, Celebration's not really a place for reading or listening to things. It's kind of a thing you just wait. You wait until it's over, and then you.
Basically, at least for me, it's you basically just put your phone away and you just experience it all.
You just use it maybe use your phone as a camera every so often, but the rest of the time it's don't really need it. Don't really need it.
Pretty much.
Yeah. If you're in the line, maybe you post a couple of pics to Instagram, but the rest of the time you're just experiencing life. It's just so raw, and the energy is just. I don't know what that was.
Yeah, you got me. So about that cover, though, you just mentioned, I thought originally it was advertised, I'm talking about the black Thrawn cover, as a Celebration exclusive. I could be wrong. Can you not just pick that up at any Barnes & Nobles anywhere now?
There was something that was Celebration exclusive about something, but I don't know. It's been so long since that information was something that I thought about that I don't really know what the difference is between the different versions now. All I know is the book on the inside is the same.
Yeah, fair warning. I have not read the epilogue or listened to the epilogue because my copy is conveniently missing it. Yeah, so I'll be tuning into you guys later on for this to actually find out what the hell's in the epilogue. um,
Yeah.
but let's start with the non-spoiler review and just general likes and dislikes about the book. Dominic, you were a late joiner here, so we're going to put you in the leadoff position. Just general likes about the book and dislikes without getting into spoiler territory.
Generally, I liked the book. I didn't think it was spectacular. If anything, I thought it was pretty middle of the road. It had its moments, but it also went on way too long. I think there was one too many little side adventures that was all to show just how smart Thrawn was. And yeah, it sort of all made the puzzle at the end fit together. But I think it would have been just as effective if we had cut one or two of those little side adventures. The other thing was I thought that the price stuff was much more was much better paced and just as compelling. I think I don't know what I was hoping for from Thrawn in this book, but I don't think I really got it. I think more what we got. I thought the price stuff was at times more interesting than what Thrawn was doing, and when the book is named Thrawn, it's kind of a little bit of a problem.
Yeah. I kind of agree with that. I don't know. I did enjoy the book overall. I didn't, like I said, nothing spectacular. Nothing. I'm definitely not my favorite by any means of the new canon books. But I mean, it was solid enough, I suppose. I think as someone who enjoys the character of Thrawn, and if you want to understand him better and get his origin story, and that's basically what this is. If you love Thrawn, I think you're gonna get a lot more out of this. I'm kind of middle of the road on Thrawn, so I enjoy the character and I enjoyed this book for what it is, and it made me appreciate Governor Pryce a lot more as a character. Someone who in Rebels is just like meh on the character. Like I can watch Rebels now and like get a better feel of what that character is, and I appreciate that. But yeah, her story, I don't know, it came together at the end, but I think, overall, I'm not sure how I feel about how much time they devoted to her in a book that literally, as you said, is named Thrawn.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with how much time they spent on her. I think, you need that sort of secondary story in the book, because otherwise it can get a bit, it can get a bit dry. Right. If you're without that sort of secondary story to sort of change things up every now and again. My biggest problem with this book is that it felt like at times the more interesting stuff was happening off screen. Like I kind of wanted to see more of what Thrawn and the Emperor were doing and talking about. And you get these scenes where Eli, his like assistant, is sort of like thinking about like what could they be talking about, and I'm like, yeah, I'd like to know. And we get a little bit. I think well, I don't want to get into spoilers, but there is a great conversation towards the end of the book that was really interesting. And but I kind of felt like I would have rather seen some of the Thrawn and the Emperor stuff. I would have liked to have seen more of that.
Yeah, that was something, and we're not in spoilers yet, so I'm not going to go into it very further, but I feel like that was something off the top that felt like it was more glossed over, that I felt like could have paid more attention to, is the fact that their relationship and Thrawn being who he is and interacting with these major characters, would have been really cool, but we didn't get a whole lot of that. So, but it was cool what we got. I think, getting his rise to power, Thrawn's rise to power, and getting the idea, at least an idea as to how he achieved that. And I think it's something we've always known throughout through Star Wars lore, whether it's EU or what Legends, whatever, that he is this character who defeated the odds, became this powerful person, and in an empire that is very racist and doesn't like aliens and stuff like that. He's a blue guy that literally became one of the most powerful people in the empire, and that's interesting. And that's what I take away from this book, is that aspect of, an interesting kind of not an underdog character, but someone who is definitely not supposed to do what he did, and he did very brilliantly, very artistically.
So I'm going to play the political edge here and agree with you both. Not only did I think that there was too much time given to Price in a book that was Thrawn, and I do think there was too much time focused on Price, and I think they could have helped out some of the pacing issues, which we'll touch on in a second, with Thrawn's story, instead of time jump here, time jump here, time jump here, which seemed to be like literally every chapter was a time jump. Price's story was actually really, really compelling, and I did not expect that. I had no idea that we were going to get so many more layers to Governor Price from Rebels. I got to be honest, I can't stand her character on Rebels, and yet I find myself leaving this book go, holy crap, I would be exactly like her if all that happened to me.
Yeah. I thought I didn't think there were pacing issues with her story. I thought her story was very well executed, and with the sort of the rise and fall and the rise again. And I sort of thought that sort of hit the beats it needed to hit at the right time. And I would have liked, I think maybe some more interaction between her and Thrawn's story would have benefited this book. I think it did feel like two stories that were going on at the same time, and they would sort of intersect briefly, but not a whole lot. I think there should just sort of been more interaction between Thrawn and some of the bigger players in general. We didn't get very much Thrawn. Did we get any Thrawn and Tarkin? I can't think if we did.
Maybe once.
Yeah, there should have been more Thrawn and the Emperor. Definitely should have been more Thrawn and Price. There was a lot of time spent with Thrawn and just sort of throwaway Imperials whose sole purpose in the story was to show how much better Thrawn was. And you need those characters. You absolutely need those characters. But I also would have liked to have seen some more. I would have taken one or two less of those to get one or two more scenes where Thrawn was interacting with the players in the galaxy and the stories that were already invested in, so that his story would have felt less isolated.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. I'm trying my damnedest here to remember if we got Thrawn and Tarkin, and there might be one scene on the bridge of the Chimera towards the end where he might have been on it, but I'm not even sure there. I'm not positive they ever seen one another. In fact, I think maybe we're supposed to believe that Thrawn and actually, I guess Thrawn and Tarkin don't even cross paths in Rebels, do they?
No. He's with him when Tarkin introduces Thrawn in that one scene, his Thrawn's first scene. So maybe we're meant to assume that that's maybe one of their first times they meet.
Yeah, it felt like it's one of those things where Thrawn probably knows a lot about Tarkin, and Tarkin probably knows a lot about Thrawn at this point, because he's got to know who his best Grand Admirals are, even if he doesn't actually interact with them on a regular basis. But I wasn't looking for any sort of special relationship between those two characters or anything. Just a scene or two to just sort of show where they perhaps acknowledge each other as key players, or as powerful allies, or as powerful players. Something between the two. I think would have spoken to both of their characters if there was like a mutual respect between them. The fact that Tarkin respected Thrawn, I think, would be a huge deal, and vice versa, just because we know how powerful they can be individually.
Some of the just for those that are considering buying the novel, some of the previews leading up to the novel, one of them specifically has the part where Thrawn mentions to Emperor Palpatine that he once, Anakin Skywalker once spoke very highly of him. Mm-hmm. And that was in a preview. And then another preview is Thrawn and Emperor Palpatine again. If you're buying this book thinking you're going to get lots of interaction, between Thrawn and Palpatine, or Thrawn and Vader, or even Thrawn and Tarkin, don't buy the book because of that, because there's not a whole lot of it. Buy the book because it's a Thrawn and Price story.
Yeah. I was kind of hoping for more of that stuff based on the previews that they put out there. I think they, obviously they know what they're doing when they put out those previews, and they put out the ones that I think are going to be most intriguing to people. And this was one where I kind of feel like the previews maybe led me to believe that the story would be more of a Thrawn and Emperor story. Obviously not. It's not going to be Thrawn and Sheev's crazy adventures, but something where we would, maybe every couple of chapters or so, we would check back in with the Emperor and sort of see what he thinks, and that we would get a better picture of what they were, or what his ultimate goals from Thrawn were, and what Thrawn's ultimate goals from the Emperor were. We get Thrawn's ultimate goals a little bit, but the Emperor's are you kind of left to put those pieces together if you've read the Aftermath trilogy.
Yeah, I think kind of an overall summary of the book, without, I don't think this is a spoiler to say, it's the book is basically just Thrawn gets into the Empire, he does something really brilliant that gets him a promotion. That happens about 5 more times. And then you have other stuff going on with Governor Price. That's basically the book, and it all leads up to something. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I think there's good stuff in there. And like I said, I think if you like the character of Thrawn and you want to learn about him and you want to kind of get this point of view, which we don't get a whole lot, which is kind of showing, like, this is one of the only other books I can think of that shows the Imperial point of view solely. Like, you have Lost Stars, which is very famous for giving us that really in-depth point of view of what the Empire is thinking at this point. But this is really completely from the Empire's point of view, showing the Imperial ranks, and you forget you're talking about all bad guys here. You're talking about just normal people moving up the ranks in this gigantic thing called the Empire, and which is actually evil, but you forget about that reading this. But
yeah, and I think that was one of the strengths. Like you said, you kind of forget, no, these are the bad guys. Right. I think that's something that Timothy Zahn did a really good job of, in terms of, getting you to buy into what was going on, and sort of getting invested in what Thrawn and Eli are doing, so that you're not really thinking about, oh no, they're killing people. They're doing things, under normal circumstances we would be cheering against them, not for them. And I thought that was a real strength of the book, that Zahn was able to pull that off, even if the book can be quite dry at times. And just back to the Thrawn Price sort of thing, I think what made Price's story land for me is that I found Thrawn and Thrawn could get very dry, and there were parts that you kind of had to push through, but then you would get to the Price stuff, and just because of the nature of the characters, there was a little bit more emotion and a little bit more the scenes had a little bit more pacing to a better pacing to them, where it wasn't just somebody standing there thinking. There was a little bit more action and that sort of thing going on.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's dive. I mean, we've already sort of touched on the characters, but without getting into spoilers, in general, I have a few here, and I guess we'll go through them all at once. So you have Thrawn, Eli Vanto, Governor Price. Yularen, I thought, got a lot more time than I expected going into this. I wasn't even sure he was going to be a part of it, to be honest. And I actually liked his role in the book. What did you guys think of his role in the book?
Yeah, I thought having Yularen in there really made the story. It really that was the one character, right, where you were looking for, like we were saying, we're looking for that interaction between Thrawn and some of the more established Imperials. He was the one guy that we kind of got some of that in there, and we know Yularen from Clone Wars, so there's a history with that character. So when it was nice to see that. Again, playing with this idea that the Imperials are not the bad guys, at least for this book. Yularen was a good guy on Clone Wars, and so just sort of to slide into him still feeling like a good guy in this book was a nice sort of a good way to keep it grounded in the Empire, and again, because we knew this character, we trusted his impressions of Thrawn, and so when he's if he's on Thrawn's side, then Thrawn's doing something right.
Yeah, I really like the character of Yularen. I think it was really well done in this book. Just the fact of Yularen is this character that I think he's a great example, even before the story group, Lucasfilm story group, and all this stuff. A great example of taking an existing character and expanding on them and putting them in a different era, and then giving us a different point of view on them. His first appearance ever was in the Death Star control room as a bad guy, but we know him from the Clone Wars as Admiral Yularen, Anakin Skywalker's right-hand man during the Clone Wars. So, and getting him in this era working alongside people like Thrawn and stuff like that, it furthers the idea, as we've said, that you're dealing with bad guys, but Yularen feels like a good guy, feels like someone who is just doing his job. And that's the one thing I take away from Thrawn, even though we've seen him in one season of Rebels as someone who is really evil. I mean, he's doing bad things and trying to destroy the rebellion. The one thing we know will end up, doing ultimate good. But you still, from his point of view, you see him as someone who is basically just doing his job, who's, from his point of view, and everything depends on your point of view, that, he is doing good. He is trying to wipe out these terrorists, these rebels, whatever, and Yularen doing the same thing. So I think those two characters together was really interesting, and getting more. I think we do have the great episode of Rebels where they're kind of both in the same episode, playing off of each other. Kind of extension of that was really cool.
I think that the one thing I would say, Yularen sort of feels like a good guy, I guess. And I get what you're saying about how Thrawn in Rebels feels evil. He does. He is. It's the way he comes across. I don't think, for a book that literally leads up to right before it seems like that episode of Rebels where Thrawn debuts, they did not sell me on this guy was evil at all. In fact, he felt more like an anti-hero than evil. I'm trying to think of something without getting spoilery yet that he does in the book that makes me go, oh, that's evil. To be honest, Price comes across far more evil at the end than Thrawn does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The book does kind of make Thrawn seem a little bit naive in the political game, and that would be something that would be interesting if Rebels would explore in season 4, because there wasn't that evil moment, whereas in the show there are a couple. Well, there's one in particular where he puts that guy on the speeder he knows isn't going to work, but I still got the impression that guy was kind of there, and I feel like maybe, again, if we've had more time with the Emperor and kind of maybe gotten into some more of what they were hoping for, it would have made him seem a little bit more evil, or we could have gotten some more evil stuff. Again, it all sort of comes down to point of view, and I think there's probably a case to be made in the show that what he's doing on the show from a certain point of view could be a good thing. So
yeah, I mean, I feel like Thrawn, especially in this book, but even, you could even argue overall, is a character that, given a few different choices and a few different variables, could be working for the rebellion just as easy. I mean, he could have been working for the Republic as far as that goes. I mean, that's the whole deal. Like, you have people like Yularen. There's plenty of people that work in the Empire that were working. I'm not talking about Palpatine. I'm talking about just regular people. Palpatine and Vader, those guys turn to the dark side. But still, you have just regular people that are doing their job in the Empire that used to be the Galactic Republic, which was considered a good entity, something that was doing good in the galaxy, the good guys. Now you have the Empire, which is evil, but they don't interpret it as that. And that's, going back to Lost Stars, which details that greatly. But I think Thrawn is a character that could very easily, he's just a strategist. He really doesn't have, you don't necessarily know what his morals are, what his, beliefs are. He's just I work for the Empire, and I do what's best for the Empire, and what's best for that is, of course, providing my military genius to help them succeed. So, and it does, the morals or the who's right, who's wrong, that doesn't really enter into it with Thrawn a lot of times.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this next season of Rebels and seeing if this book changes our perception of Thrawn now, because we know he doesn't believe in the Empire the way that like Tarkin does.
Yeah.
But he does have goals that are best filled, other goals that are best filled by working for the Empire. And so to see how that is addressed, or just to even not even addressed necessarily, but to see how that changes our perception of him, I think is going to be interesting.
Right.
What did you guys think of Eli Vanto? AKA this version's, or the new canon's version of Admiral Pelion.
I thought it was great. I mean, I think just a really interesting character overall, and kind of seeing his progression, of course, because you kind of feel for this guy, going into it. He is, I think that was an interesting way. I'm not sure if it had just been Thrawn, I'm not sure how the book would have worked, but having the juxtaposition of having Vanto there to kind of interpret everything and kind of have a lot of the book is from his perspective, I think it was an interesting way to do it and kind of experience Thrawn and kind of get this point of view. And like I said, you feel for this guy because he's kind of thrown into this, and he doesn't really know what to make of Thrawn, but ends up through the book kind of appreciating Thrawn for who he is. And we know as viewers that Thrawn is going to excel and be great from a certain point of view in his own right. So and Vanto doesn't realize that, of course, at first, but I think that's just interesting character, and just having the kind of the overall, just kind of this background of, I think a lot of people can relate to this, being from maybe an area or talking a certain way or whatever, that people look down upon you, but being able to still do your job and being able to succeed, that's very relatable.
Yeah, I kept waiting for Eli to lose it with Thrawn to tell him what he really thinks, kind of thing.
Right.
And I'm both glad and disappointed that didn't happen. I on the one hand, that's sort of the obvious way to go, and so I'm glad that they avoided the cliche. But at the same time, I feel like it would have been an interesting twist in the story, because the Eli Thrawn relationship never really gets tested. You really wonder what these guys think of each other. Do they just sort of see each other as a means to an end? I think Thrawn definitely feels that way. I wouldn't say that even. What is their relationship? Are they friends? Are they just sort of work colleagues? Are they using each other? I don't know. It's never clearly defined, and it's something that it kind of remains stagnant throughout the whole story, where it never really evolves into anything other than Eli sort of picks up a lot of Thrawn's ways of doing things, and the epilogue kind of touches on that. But as far as how they interacted, it never really changed from beginning to end.
Right.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Final character we'll go over here before getting into the spoiler discussion. Did anybody else find Night Swan, who's supposed to be more or less the villain of the story, kind of just I personally completely no-sold the character. I couldn't have cared less. I didn't find anything compelling about Night Swan, and I think that's the one area in this book that I look at specifically where I go, they could have done a lot better than that.
Yeah, I kind of wish they had made Night Swan a little bit more of a. I don't know if I can. Can we talk about Night Swan when we get to spoilers? Because I don't know how to talk about it without.
Agreed. Yeah.
Revealing.
So before we get there, then, do you recommend people buying this book, paying the, I don't know what it is, American, but up here it's pretty much $40 for the hardcover?
This is one I think, unless you're a hardcore Thrawn fan, you can wait for the paperback. It's not. If you're only gonna if you're only gonna read one Star Wars book this year, I wouldn't recommend this one. That being said, if you like Star Wars and you like Rebels and you like the character Thrawn, you're gonna find things in this book that work for you. And overall, the book does work, but it's not something that I think is a real standout, a real it's not a home run. It's maybe a solid single.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think it just all depends on if you want to read it. If you are big into Thrawn, if you really enjoy that character, if you've read the Thrawn trilogy 5 times over, if you're really excited about what he's doing in Rebels, then yeah, I think it definitely is worth the money, because you're getting his origin story. That's basically what you're getting in this book. So if you want to learn more about Thrawn, you want to learn more about Price and all those characters, then yeah, go for it. If not, maybe just wait. Maybe just, take your time with it and, catch it, as Dominic said, as in a paperback, because it's not, I don't think it's a must read. I really don't think. Maybe for Rebels fans, maybe, but even so, not really. Maybe when they make him the main villain in episode 10 in a few years, he'll be a must read. But for right now, it's skippable, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd skip the book, but I'm a Dominic. I'm a Thrawn fan, though. He's one of my favorite characters. So for me, it was a must get. But for the average Star Wars fan, I'd suggest waiting for paperback. I mean, you can get that $11, $12 up here. Yeah. Although I'll stress, if you have the little extra money, buy the audiobook version, whether you like burying your head in a novel. And I own over 50 Star Wars hardcover novels and about another 24 paperbacks. The job Mark Thompson and Random House Audio do on those books is ridiculous. And he changes his voice. The intro for Star Wars Wastelands, you hear the original Thrawn voice that he used for 5 previous books. And I personally loved that voice. So when Mark starts reading here, and Ben can either agree with me or disagree with me, dude, he sounds almost identical to Mickelson. I was like, wait a second, is this even Mark doing this book? Yeah. And I literally had to go back and check. I'm like, okay, well, I guess that's why he changed the voice to match his, because damn, does he have a damn good impression of it.
Yeah, you're right. He definitely goes the extra mile to try to emulate Lars Mikkelson's Thrawn, which is great. But I think, I don't know, I've only listened to a bit of the original Thrawn trilogy audiobooks, and I want to go back and listen to them now. Just the fact of everything that is going on with Thrawn. But I can't remember exactly like how far off or how close that is, but I feel like it's good continuity. You feel like if you get the audiobook, and I always recommend audiobooks, it feels like it's just watching an episode of Rebels or something without the pictures. I mean, it really is. He did a great job of emulating that.
Totally, absolutely agree. Let's move into the spoiler discussion. So if you've not read Star Wars Thrawn by Timothy Zahn or listened to it, and you do not like spoilers, then this is the time for you to tune out. If you don't care about being spoiled and you have read the book, then stay with us for the next 20 minutes or so. I'm going to jump right into it here. The way Thrawn's discovered is it's very similar to how the discovery is done with Thrawn in Legends, with some subtle differences, but the same Imperial officer discovers him in this as they do in Legends. That's that. Park. And then Park just sort of disappears, which is a little different. Park and Thrawn had much more of a relationship in Legends, which I'm fine with. It served his purpose. Get rid of him. That's fine. How do you guys take to the just his introduction to Eli and the Imperials?
I like that it was a fake out. So, like we said, spoilers. It was kind of interesting, the idea. I think it's cool that they kept the same character to discover him. It doesn't really mean anything to me outside of that, but I did think that was cool. But I do like that there was more to it, that he wasn't an actual exile, that there was a purpose behind what he was doing. And that's kind of, I think, part of the reason I was a little bit disappointed, is that I felt like we were maybe going to learn just a teeny bit more about whatever is out there lurking beyond the known galaxy. I mean, it's probably Snoke. But it does. I was kind of hoping that there would be a little bit more of a clue or something.
Yeah, this is the second book now that's basically ended with basically like going into the unknown regions, and then it stops there. Like, you had Aftermath, spoilers for that book too. Empire's End ends pretty much as they're getting to the unknown regions, and then it's like, oh, there's someone on the bridge, and then it cuts, and I almost threw my phone out the window of my car when I heard that, because like, no, keep going, I want to learn more about this. And they're really teasing us with that, and I know hopefully it's going to pay off at some point, but yeah, this thing. But yeah, I don't know.
I think that Dominic hit the nail on the head. I think it's absolutely Snoke. Why everybody's, fearful of him or whatever he was a part of is another story. I have absolutely no idea. But I would bet the house on it's Snoke. It's the only buildup that seems to make sense, and it kills all the, well, Snoke is this guy, Snoke is that guy. And I mean, I've been on that train before too. I hope to hell that Snoke was Plagueis for a while. But you know what? I think it's time to say Snoke is Snoke, and I think they've been referencing him here for a while across.
No. Come on now.
Star Wars
Don't. You don't have to beat around the bush about this. I know you didn't read the last portion of the book, but I mean, we all know now that the book confirms that Thrawn is indeed Snoke, right?
It's true.
Yeah, that's the last scene.
All of it. It's true. It's all true.
No, I'm totally lying there. Do not go on. Do not go to Movie Pilot and post that, please.
Yes, indeed. So, what do you guys feel about the initial meeting with the Emperor? I was really stoked to get to listen to that meeting, because it was one of the previews that was released for the book, and well, it was cool, and you could tell everybody around. I'm forgetting the Imperial officers' names that were practically shaking in their boots in front of Palpatine. I came across just underwhelming. I felt I didn't think it was as good as it could have been. I didn't think the mention of Anakin Skywalker paid off at all. I thought that was just a tidbit to throw in there for the preview. Hey, read this, because you're going to get more of this, even though you don't. Is
that kind of a nod to Outbound Flight, sort of, a little bit, kind of? But yeah, no, I know what you mean. Like it again, this whole thing with the Thrawn and the Emperor was, I felt like something was being set up, and that was never paid off. Like we never. It felt like the book was promising us something, and it never fulfilled that promise. That there was going to be some sort of reveal. Even obviously they're not going to reveal the origins of Snoke in a book, even if they're sort of hinting at it, unless the book is Star Wars Snoke. But I was hoping that there would be a little bit something like, there's some sort of something more between Thrawn and Vader that would kind of make Thrawn wonder the same way that Tarkin wonders, or something that the Emperor was going to tell him, or something that he was going to tell the Emperor that was really going to make us think and sort of question our speculation and that sort of thing. And instead, we just sort of got some really sort of vague allusions to, there are threats out there that some are known, some aren't. But I would like to know what it is that sort of. I would have been more intrigued if there were a particular threat, Snoke, even if he's not named in the book, that was the reason that the Chiss Ascendancy sent Thrawn to infiltrate the Empire the way that he did, or to not even infiltrate the Empire, just to have a look at the Empire. And I wish there had been more paid to that, instead of just a really sort of general, it could be this or it could be that. Or I wish there was, no, there is this, there is something coming, and we need to be aware of it, or there is something out there that we think we need to take down because it could be dangerous one day.
Yeah, that whole, I don't know, it was an interesting thing, but also wasn't, I don't know, they could have, I feel like you said, I wanted to explore that more, just the fact of, realizing that basically Thrawn's whole thing with being a ruse to just get him into the Empire and rise up the ranks was interesting, and it didn't get a whole lot on that. I was just confused from the start with, and maybe it's just me, but just the fact of they find this guy on this planet, and he's literally just outwitting them and killing their soldiers, and straight up defeating them at every turn, and ends up sneaking his way onto their ship. This guy is basically he's committed an act of war against the Empire, and their first thing to do is take him to the Emperor, and then he gives him a command. I didn't get the whole idea. It seemed like the next stop for Thrawn would have been like a prison cell instead of actually being part. I don't know. I guess it was the fact of the Emperor saw a lot of a potential in him, and of course to use him. But that was something that kind of confused me off the top.
Felt multiple times in this book, and it might have been Lords of the Sith too. I can't remember. It's been over a year since I listened to that one. That Palpatine's well aware something else is out there. He's not an idiot. As much as he's enjoying ruling the Republic, it seems like he is, cautiously aware.
I'm not sure Palpatine knows necessarily something's out there. I think he is bored as Emperor, that he wants to, he's conquered the galaxy. Now he needs something else to conquer. And so he's probably going to, we learn in this book, he has Thrawn mapping the unknown regions for him, or mapping parts of it. I think he wants to, go explore. I think he wants to head out there and find something else to conquer. Whether that is, what I'm starting to say is I don't think he's prepping for a threat that's going to come to him. I think he's looking for a challenge. I think that's what he has Thrawn looking for. That's what he has those computers on Jakku looking for. I think that to me feels truer to Palpatine's character than having him. I don't like the idea that the Death Star was secretly for the Vong. I like the idea that the Death Star was to be the Death Star, and that maybe it probably could have been helpful against the Yuuzhan Vong, but it should have just been the Death Star for ruling the galaxy, so that once he has this galaxy in control, he can seek out new things to conquer, because once you get a sip of power, you can never have enough. And I think that's very much Lucas's ideas for the dark side, and I think it's true to those to have him out there just looking for new things to beat up on, because at a certain point, just sort of conquering the Republic is going to get boring for him, because there's no more threats, especially after he just spent whoever knows how many years putting this plot into action, and then it's sort of like, yes, I am Emperor. Now what? He had a driving purpose for so long to overthrow the Republic, to defeat the Jedi, and now he's done all of those things. Sort of like, well, what's next? Because Palpatine doesn't seem the type to just sit on his hands until he dies.
Yeah, I think, galactic domination doesn't just stop with a known galaxy with him. I think it's interesting to think that, he would be going and to, if the rebellion hadn't been a thing and he'd been able to attain complete control over the galaxy, the unknown regions would have been the next stop for the Empire. And obviously they were exploring them, obviously their, thing, and we get the idea that the First Order goes into these regions and then comes back as something different, and what is in there? What is going on? We understand that, apparently the Chiss are in there, that, thing, and you have an entire other galaxy. I like that they're exploring this. I'm hoping we'll get some good answers. I'm afraid we won't, but I'm hoping we will get some really solid answers about what's going on, and I think a next step, just like, just think about it overall in Star Wars storytelling. After, we're going into this new sequel trilogy, and, we have characters like Snoke showing up. We don't know where he came from, who he is. Perhaps he did come from the unknown regions. That's an interesting place to take the saga, is to go and to explore. We've seen a lot of this galaxy.
Star Wars has never really done that sort of exploration. There's a little bit in some of the Tales of the Jedi comic books, and the obviously Outbound Flight as well. But this idea of exploring beyond the known galaxy has never really been touched on in Star Wars, and it would be an interesting thing to see on screen. Luke went and looked for the first Jedi temple because it was lost to time, essentially.
Right.
And I would like to see that. I would like to sort of see that type of adventure at some point. I got a little bit of it on Rebels with the going to Lyrasan, but I'd like to see like a movie version, or even a decent novel about it, where it's not just about let's play with what we already have. It's let's track some unknown space. Let's go out and discover something new. And I think that there's a lot of potential there. And I hope that's where the storytelling is going in the between Jedi and Force Awakens era, as we sort of build up to Snoke's reveal to the galaxy, and obviously the whole Starkiller Base incident.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's skip past the Imperial Academy stuff, because it's pretty much the same thing over and over and over again as the novel goes on. Dominic wanted to touch on Night Swan here as we got into the spoiler discussion. So, just general thoughts on Night Swans.
Yeah, this was kind of a, like, I think this is not, the whole Night Swan thing is kind of twofold, because on the surface, I think that the Night Swan reveal was poorly executed. I didn't remember who that character was. I kind of flipped back through the book and kind of realize what actually, so it's this person. And so it wasn't effective in that way for me, because I didn't get that oh my god moment that you're supposed to have. That being said, I think the conversation between Night Swan and Thrawn that they have in that field was one of the best, was probably the best scene in the entire book. I thought that the way it sort of they went back and forth on these ideas on what is the best way forward, I thought was really interesting, and it was kind of an interesting moral and ethical debate, while also sort of teasing what I've been looking for from this book, which was, giving us a little bit more of a sense of what is it that Thrawn fears, what is it that the Chiss fear, why is he here? And so I thought that was a really strong scene, one of the strongest scenes followed up one of the weakest scenes. So it was kind of interesting in that way. But yeah, so I was kind of underwhelmed by the Night Swan reveal, but I enjoyed the Night Swan character, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that was just cool to, like you said, that scene, and just towards the ending, that was really cool. But at the same time, it's just like, I don't know. I think they wanted it to be. He wanted it to be, Timothy Zahn wanted it to be a bigger of a deal than it actually was. Like him revealing, "Oh, this is Night Swan," is like, "Oh, okay, is that dude from that ship that was acting like he was on the ship as a hostage, but he really wasn't, and he betrayed them. Oh, he's not Swan now. I guess that makes sense." Like it was basically that kind of reveal. It's to make you scratch your head instead of go, "Oh my gosh." It wasn't like that. So
yeah,
but I did enjoy his character. I think that was an interesting way of doing it, and also bringing it about the fact of, like, you have that conversation between them on, Bataan, them just Thrawn and him just having a discussion, like you're trying to figure out, and that whole sequence is like, okay, who is actually the bad guys here? Because, like, these guys are kind of like a rebel sect in themselves, so they are the good guys, but from a certain point of view, and from Thrawn's point of view, these guys are evil and the bad guys, and you're trying to defeat them. That was an interesting idea to take and kind of run with.
The conversation was amazing. I do agree with that. The reveal, It was this guy from that place during this thing, way earlier in the book that you might remember because it has a very tiny part in it. But the conversation I thought revealed from my perspective was, as much as Thrawn is working for the Empire, this guy is still out for number one, his people. That is his number one concern, and that is different than how Thrawn was in Legends.
Yeah, which is, it's a change, but sometimes change is good, and I think I like to think that there's a purpose to that. I like to think that there's that they're actually going to follow through on that in some way, and I think that they are. I think that this sort of between this book and Aftermath, we are going to learn something about Thrawn, and I do think that there's a story that will be told about the Empire post Jedi encountering the Chiss, and I feel like there's some groundwork being laid for some future story. It's just a matter of if and when and where we get that story, and there's nothing wrong with leaving plot threads open, but I feel like this book left plot threads open as if it were part one of a trilogy, when there's no guarantee that there's a Thrawn 2 coming, because we don't know what happens to this character. We don't, and we have yet to see Del Rey really want to invest in any of the new characters that they have that's been created in their books to carry a story. It's either, I guess he can maybe make the case for the first Aftermath, although I know people don't think that that's the strongest case. But other ones have really been marketed on, this is a Luke Skywalker novel, this is a Tarkin novel, this is the Rogue One novel, this is the Battlefront novel. And so it would be interesting to see if they're going to say, okay, we're going to do an Eli Vanto story and tell you what happened after this book ends.
That would be cool.
I could have swore I heard Timothy Zahn confirm that he's working on more Thrawn material. He didn't call it a book, which could be just, someone asking him for insight on something. But I would assume Rebel Season 4 is already completely done.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely written.
Written
so,
and everything.
Could have been talking out of his ass for all I know.
Yeah.
I will say this, though. This book, the one thing that it did give me is when we found out at Celebration that Warwick Davis was going to play Rook. I was just like, why would you announce that? Like, if you then have, spoiler alert here, this is spoiler discussion. Rook kills Thrawn in Legends. If they go that route again, it is like the biggest slap in the fan base, or in the face to the fan base, because it's like, so you're just gonna introduce this character again and have the same result happen again? I don't think there's. I thought, when that was announced, which was prior to me finishing this, that's how Thrawn was going to go again. It's like, and obviously they weren't doing it to slap the fan base.
Whenever we eventually get to the point where Thrawn is killed, it's not going to be in Rebels. I can guarantee you that. I don't know. That's dumb. I'm sorry. Thrawn is a huge character. How could you do that and then bring him and then kill him off?
I don't think he makes it out of Rebels, and it's because of this book that I don't think he makes it out of Rebels. I think that the whole point of this of the epilogue, and I know you haven't read the epilogue yet, Sean, but it's
spoil away.
To me, it's very, very clear that the whole point of Eli going to the Chiss is so that there will be some sort of Imperial representative there when the Empire meets them, because Thrawn won't be with the Empire or the Chiss at that point when the Empire and the Chiss eventually meet, because Thrawn will be dead. And there is one passage, the passage at the beginning of the epilogue. How every chapter begins with sort of like a thought from Thrawn. Isn't the
right?
Thrawn #Thrawn thoughts. And he talks about what it means to have friends, and he sort of goes on. He says there's no true answer, perhaps because true friendship is so exceedingly rare, and it ends up with here. What is it? If one is fortunate, those paths will, for a time, join. But if the paths separate, it's comforting to know that a friend still graces the universe with his skills and his viewpoint and his presence. For if one is remembered by a friend, one is never truly gone. Thrawn's dying at season 4 of Rebels because Eli's going to be the sort of the connection between the Chiss and the Empire when they finally meet post Jedi.
Well, I'm going to start sharpening my torch and pitchforks because that this is I'm starting to riot.
Well, and see, this is part of the reason I think I want more scenes between Thrawn and the Emperor. I wanted more scenes between Thrawn and the Emperor in this book because those are conversations that I think would be very illuminating to us as fans as to what the story, in terms of laying some groundwork for that story. And we never really got it. It was sort of, it's kept very vague. And if Thrawn dies in season 4 of Rebels, which I'm predicting he will, it does kind of, it makes me feel like there almost needs to be like a second Thrawn book that takes place exactly at the same time as this one. That's just entirely, Thrawn and the Emperor sort of laying out their plots for what's to come, or some sort of sequel book that's
or what if we heard that rumor that Ian McDiarmid could possibly be recording or could have recorded lines for Palpatine for Rebels season 4? What if we get a Thrawn and Emperor scene near the end of Rebels?
That would be cool.
Like an exile scene?
No, I
just think a scene between the two of them, maybe after all is said and done. I speculated on the last Star Wars Underworld podcast that we could get kind of a juxtaposition to, because Rebels started with a Vader and Emperor scene. Maybe it ends with an Emperor Thrawn scene, and you kind of maybe it'll help explain why Thrawn isn't in, because we'd still have to. I mean, if they do kill him off, that's an easy way to say, okay, he's not in the original trilogy, he's not around. But if they don't kill him off, that's a hard way to, he can't just be there. You have to give him a reason why he's not in the original trilogy, because he really should be. He is one of the top commanders in the Empire. He needs to have something else to do during the events of the original trilogy, or at least during the Battle of Endor, that he's not around. I think Legends explain that pretty clearly, whereas now you need a canon explanation.
Mm-hmm. The reason I don't think he dies, and at least the reason he should not die in Rebels Season 4, is if you're good at doing something, never do it for free. And I just can't see them wasting a chance to make millions of dollars on even if it's one sequel novel where you kill Thrawn because something happens with the Chiss ascendancy out there, and Thrawn, or even a Thrawn Palpatine book that he takes however much of the Empire out into the unknown regions, and something happens between them and the Chiss and this threat Snoke. Maybe I just, to not pay it off is ridiculous. And if they do go the route where Rook kills Thrawn, someone at Lucasfilm should be fired immediately to reveal that almost a full year in advance, and then still go with that is brutal marketing, in my opinion.
They didn't say at Celebration, Rook does this or anything, but yeah,
just having him there feels like, uh-oh.
Yeah, see, I think it's just a idea of bringing him in to the thing, and you have a last chance to have Rook, this literally legendary character, on screen, introducing him into canon. That doesn't mean they're gonna use him for his ultimate thing. There's other things they can do with Rook and have him as his bodyguard, and then later on in a book or a comic or a TV show or a movie, they can have Rook fulfill his destiny and stab Thrawn.
Yeah, well, I think here's the other thing though, is it seems to be the policy of Lucasfilm right now that if a character is introduced in a project, that project should get the chance to determine their fate. And there can be sort of supplementary material like books and comics that add layers to that character. but that if that character was introduced in Rebels, then if Rebels, then Rebels is probably where they're going to be killed if they're killed, and I think that they've introduced Thrawn, and I think if Dave Filoni and crew have a story that kills Thrawn, then he's going to get the chance to do it regardless of whether or not we think it would be a missed opportunity. And I think that they are setting up this Eli cat to be the one who fulfills Thrawn's legacy, that he will be the Imperial representative with the Chiss, and that his sole purpose at the end of this book is now to take what Thrawn has done and carry it forward, because Thrawn's not going to be around to do it. And so I don't think we're done with the Chiss. I don't think we're done with Eli. And certainly if they did a story about, the Empire meeting the Chiss, there could definitely be room for flashbacks to Thrawn, and that could answer some of our questions here. But I'm betting on if Rebels wants to kill him, they're killing him, and that this other character, this epilogue is in place to, so that this other story that Zahn has established can go forward without him.
I think it would be an incredible waste to do that, and I hear what you're saying as far as like taking him into, whoever introduces him gets to kill him off. I think that's kind of a narrow view. I feel like they should have the room to say, hey, introduce this character here and then explore them further. And I honestly, from the beginning, I've taken Thrawn's appearance in Rebels as a test. I think Thrawn was used heavily, but I feel like they're going to use him even bigger ways in the future.
I don't know.
What are the odds that Thrawn could be the main villain of the next animated series?
That's my thought, honestly.
No, I would be gobsmacked if that happened.
I haven't ruled out the idea that they could do kind of a pseudo reboot of the Thrawn trilogy and basically do what they did and basically have him be the main villain, because we don't know what goes on between, the 30 years between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens is really very much untouched. We don't know what happens. Maybe nothing happens. I think something does happen, though. And what if Thrawn is the main villain, and what if, they could have another trilogy of books that's totally devoted to Thrawn.
I don't think that works, though, with what they've established in Force Awakens. To me, the only way that Force Awakens works is if nothing happens, like nothing major happens on a galactic scale between the Battle of Jakku and when the First Order shows up for the first time. I think it's the galaxy would be a lot more on edge. They would be a lot more they would be a little bit more anticipating that something would be coming if there were sort of repeated attempts to bring back the Empire. And I think that, if Thrawn makes it out of this, then there's probably a story there. If Thrawn can make it to the sequel era, then I'm sure there's a story there where he's involved with this group of Imperials that's in the Nebula with Ray Sloan and Brendol Hux and the likes of that. But I think that there kind of just the galaxy needs to go quiet for 25 years between Jakku and the First Order, and that they can't, and that there's definitely room for stories there, but the stories can't be on a galactic scale. They have to be on a much smaller scale. They have to be centered around just a couple of planets or a couple of systems, or just a couple of characters going around on to a couple of planets or to a couple of systems. It can't be the Clone Wars. It can't be it can't even be Rebels necessarily. It has to be small. It has to be, there can be real stakes for characters, but it can't really ever threaten to explode into galaxy-wide war, let alone be a galaxy-wide war.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be anything huge, but I definitely agree with what you're saying.
A reboot of the Thrawn trilogy, to me, Thrawn was very successful in those books, and it's kind of implied that if Rook hadn't turned on him, it would have been bad for the New Republic. And I think that to have something like that happen, even 15 years before the First Order, there would be, I think that if something like that were to happen, there would have been a movement in the New Republic Senate and taxation of trade routes. No, there would have been a movement within the galaxy like, no, we need to remilitarize. We need to be kind of on the ready for this in a way that they're just not in Episode 7.
Yeah, and as far as like, that's something that I kind of expect, but I hope they don't do it. I hope that we never get a reboot or even something close to a reboot of the Thrawn trilogy. Whatever we get in the future will be something completely different, something completely fresh and new, and leave the Thrawn trilogy as it is. But I still think Thrawn lives.
Yeah.
Thrawn dies.
Hashtag Thrawn lives.
I mean, look, there's a reason why we're getting the Star Wars movie every year. Money talks, and this character, financially speaking, I haven't seen the numbers on the book. I don't even know if they're accessible yet, but I'm willing to bet whether people like the book or not, it's probably the highest selling new canon book. I would bet my life on it.
I don't know.
So although I'll still say that I think Lords of the Sith is the best new canon book. Bloodline.
Yeah.
I love the politics in Bloodline. I'll say that.
This is definitely was a bestseller. I think it hit number 2 on the charts, in its categories. I don't know if it would be the number 1 selling. I think probably, as much as this may seem weird, but probably the first Aftermath book is where I would put my money on being the bestseller of the Star Wars books, because there was so much hype, and whether or not it lived up to it is a whole different debate. But I kind of think, I'm not disagreeing with you that there's definitely money to be made from this character. I just, compared to the money that could be made by investing in new characters that don't come with baggage, the baggage that something like the anything from the old EU comes with, I think that is where Disney and Lucasfilm should be investing their time and investing their money. And the truth is, movies make so much more money than books. And I think if they gave us like a Rey or a Poe Dameron or a Kylo Ren book, which eventually I think will come, that is sort of equivalent in scope to this, that's gonna just be the cash cow of all cash cows for Star Wars publishing.
I'll say this is, in terms of the investing in new characters, they have a shot here with Eli Vanto, because I really liked his character in this book.
That's why Thrawn's got to die, so he can have the spotlight. Because he'll never. Eli Vanto, I don't think, can ever reach his full potential if Thrawn's there.
But what if it's a Thrawn versus Eli Vanto thing, in terms of like a sequel book that ends Thrawn?
Well, if people are going to be okay, I think the question is can they write Eli to be a strong enough character on his own that that people will believe him taking down Thrawn? I didn't get that from this book necessarily, but you know what? Maybe in book 2.
One question that I have, kind of directed at you, Sage, as someone who is, I haven't gone all the way through the Thrawn trilogy, and but I am familiar with Paleon. Do you think Vanto completely replaces Paleon in canon, or do you think they'll eventually bring Paleon in if Thrawn survives?
Well, I hadn't read the epilogue, so finding out what happens from you guys there with Vanto is it brings some peace to me, because I thought that maybe he would just get killed in the epilogue.
Nope.
I think it's a different character. Up until the point where you guys said that he goes off to the Chiss Ascendancy, if that's what they're still calling it, Chiss Empire, whatever. Right. No, I don't think he's Paleon. I think he started off as that, but clearly they are taking a different direction with him. I personally don't see the need for Paleon's character, and this is a guy that didn't really like him in the Thrawn trilogy, but respected his character going forward after that. I don't think we need to see his character in this new Star Wars canon, and that's a Legends fan saying that.
Interesting.
Before we close things out here, though, Thrawn got to meet Vader right towards the end of the book. You guys have any thoughts on that? And we'll start off with that, and then I'll mention my other 2 points.
Not really. I would have liked to have seen some interaction between the two, but there's already enough sort of does Tarkin know who Vader is to go around, so I don't necessarily need that from a Thrawn Vader relationship. So if they do have more stuff together, which I'm not opposed to seeing, I hope that they don't spend too much time focusing on that question, because we already have that with Tarkin.
Yeah, I don't know where it's gonna go as far as I'm just curious, and I want to get more with these characters. Honestly, like I want the continuation of that last scene. I want to see where it goes. I want to see where Vanto goes, because I really enjoy Vanto, and I've heard a lot of people say they enjoyed Vanto. So getting more with him, whether it's, they could do anything now. They could do anything. I mean, I know I always have grand expectations as far as like, you're going to be in a movie, but, they could do a comic, they could do another book, they could do a solo book with just him. I think he could easily, look at what they did with Ray Sloan. Taking her from just being kind of a middle ground kind of antagonist for A New Dawn, and then she shows up in a bunch of things. She even in comics, I believe, in the canon comics, I think. So a really well-developed, really interesting character, and they can, I think, say what you want to about the EU, but the expanded universe gave us some really intriguing, classic Star Wars characters that really held their own. Mara Jade, even all the solo kids, stuff like that. Like, I think that was interesting. People latched onto those characters, and they went from book to book to book and developed this kind of intertwined universe. I think they're doing well in canon to continue that and kind of bring up new characters, and not so much, because they could have easily just put Paleon in this role. They could have just had this Paleon or something other. They did, as you said from the beginning, they had the same character, the same Imperial officer that finds him is the same one from Legends, which is great. I think that's paying homage to the source material. When you have someone like Timothy Zahn in charge, of course he's going to throw those things in, but I think still making it feel fresh and new and giving us a new character to latch onto. Who knows? Maybe people were already wanting more Vanto stories. That's a good sign. We want more from this character. It's a brand new character. We're not wishing for, more stuff with this character, that character. We're this brand new character that was just introduced. Hey, I want to see more of him. That's a good sign.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I did notice that Thrawn had mentioned that he has definitely heard of Darth Vader. So Vader's clearly not a secret to the... Thrawn's different. Maybe Thrawn's he'd heard of him because of his brilliance. I don't know. But I get the sense that all the Imperials, at least most of them, know of Darth Vader if the public doesn't know about him. I did find it interesting, though, right at the end of the book when Vader name drops the Death Star, that Palpatine seems, legitimately kind of pissed off.
Yeah, I did think that was interesting. I have really enjoyed what's been going on in this era of Star Wars storytelling, of this sort of dark times era between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, and sort of piecing together this. I thought what they've done in this whole era of sort of the dark times between episodes 3 and 4 with the Death Star across all the storytelling has been really interesting, especially with Rogue One having come out last year, with the Tarkin novel and Catalyst and what they did on Rebels, and even in stuff like A New Dawn and to a lesser extent Lords of the Sith, and sort of setting up this idea that the Death Star is out there, and then that of course Rogue One picked up on that in a big way, as did Catalyst, and then the stuff since then like Rebel Rising and Thrawn has sort of continued it, and it looks like it's going to continue on Rebels this season as well. It's kind of been interesting to follow and look at, just sort of the simplest references, like in this book they talk a lot about was it Dunium being mined, and it's kind of implied that that's for the Death Star, and then I was just reading Rebel Rising over the weekend, and there's a reference to Dunium. I'm like, oh, Death Star. I know that. I understood that reference, and I've really liked how they've sort of played out the Death Star in this era. I kind of wish that like they could have done more of that in the lead up to Rogue One, but again, the stupidity of and the ridiculous level of Lucasfilm security is such that they don't want to let anything out that may even slightly let you figure out the plot of a movie, even in the smallest ways, but it's such that they some of the stuff had to wait until after that movie came out. But as an era as a whole, like if you were to just sort of follow the chronology of this era and somehow read all of the stories from Catalyst up until A New Hope in order, there's a pretty cool narrative, I think, there to be uncovered of the story of the Death Star, and I think they've done a really good job at sort of building that story into this era without it necessarily taking over every single story.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, just looking at my notes here. Yeah, I guess that's really it. So we know that Dominic thinks Thrawn dies, and Ben and I are hoping he doesn't.
I know he doesn't.
I seriously hope you're right. If they do kill him in Clone Wars, yeah, I wish. If they do kill him in Rebels, it better not be Rook, or else that's ridiculous the way they handled that. Yeah, I guess just for this book, guys, out of 10 lightsabers, what do you rate it?
6.5, maybe 7.
6 and a Yoda lightsaber.
Yeah,
6 and a Yoda lightsaber.
Yeah. If I'm feeling generous, I'll give it 7. But yeah, usually it's 6 and a Yoda lightsaber.
I was hoping that this book would be, one that I could give, 9.5. I really thought it would be. I didn't read it. I listened to it, but you could tell Timothy Zahn's writing is still on par. 7 for me, which is shocking. I thought I would have been rating it way more than that. And it wasn't. Final thoughts, guys?
Yeah, overall, like it's not a bad book. It's not it's not Heir to the Jedi or anything, but it's still kind of it didn't have the punch that you're looking for in a Star Wars novel. It didn't, the story was intriguing enough, but it wasn't the most compelling story ever told. And I felt like there were some really interesting things that were sort of alluded to, but never actually sort of addressed in a significant way. And so it kind of falls short in that regard. And I do think it's a bit too long. There's a couple of sequences that got very sort of like very dry, very had to sort of push forward. And it made the book have a bit of a repetitive feel. And so it's a decent enough book. It's probably, like we said at the top, probably a paperback. If you're just sort of for your average hardcore Star Wars fan, it's probably one that is worth a paperback, not a hardcover. But overall, yeah, like I said, decent enough. Nothing special, nothing great, but pretty good.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it I'm gonna also go in the same neighborhood as you guys. I'm gonna give it a 7. I think, like I said, it was good, not fantastic. I enjoyed it. I really did. I enjoyed getting the Imperial perspective. I enjoyed getting more on Thrawn. I look forward to more stories with Thrawn since he's not going to die, and we're gonna get more stuff with him. And I think this is a good way to start him off and give him kind of that solid foundation of, okay, now we're gonna take this character into the future, introducing him in canon and kind of ingraining him in Star Wars lore, even though he always has been, it's, since, the kind of the wipeout with canon and kind of wiping the slate clean, you lose characters like Thrawn, and it's like, okay, where does this character fit in now? Now we know. Now it's hard to really imagine the Empire without Thrawn and this whole era without Thrawn, so that's really interesting. And, Price was good. I think a lot of the supporting characters were really interesting, and kind of getting that side of things was really awesome. It wasn't, maybe as enthralling or as incredible as we hoped it would be, especially bringing back someone like Timothy Zahn to Star Wars and having him do another book. I mean, this is incredible. I think, it's nowhere probably near the greatness of the Thrawn trilogy. I doubt much of anything will be, but I think he did a decent enough job, and I'm looking forward to more stuff with Timothy Zahn. I hope you're right, Sage, that he is doing more stuff, and I would like to see him do other stuff. He does other things besides Thrawn, so maybe it'd be cool to get that. And now that we have Thrawn out of the way, taking some of these other characters like Eli Vanto, like Price, like, I don't know, just getting more into this. And there's a lot of mythology here, and there's a lot of hints at stuff that we really need to see explored. Just don't keep hinting at stuff. Give us some good, solid meat of a story to actually chew on, instead of these little teases about the unknown regions and the chiss and all this kind of stuff. Give us something to go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a lot of novels in the new canon have hinted at something big, and then there's just no payoff in it. So let's hope that changes relatively soon. Price has not died in Rebels yet, right? She's still kicking?
No, still around.
All right, so that's I'm betting here live that Thrawn is going to kill Price.
Yeah, I think Price
Thrawn
will die.
was very pleased with Price's attitude towards the end of that novel, and actions for that matter, because technically she has committed treason.
Yes, yeah, Price is a scumbag. She really is. Like, you get this feeling she is. There's no bones about it. She's evil. she's not good. And Thrawn up next to her looks like a hero.
Her poor friends. That's all I'll say. Where can everybody catch you guys this week?
Star Wars Underworld. Dominic, take away.
Oh, yeah. On Thursday, we're doing the Star Wars Underworld podcast live on Channel1138.com. Then it's available pretty much immediately thereafter on iTunes and Google Play. It's the 40th anniversary of Star Wars.
Yeah.
So we'll probably talk about that. And there's some lots and lots of Han Solo leaks and stuff to talk about. And, of course, Last Jedi Vanity Fair pictures to overanalyze, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Always.
Wait, have the pictures actually come out for that? Or we'll say that, bro.
They come out tomorrow.
Oh, would you look at that?
Yes.
And there's a show tomorrow night you can catch on Channel 1138 called Star Wars Wastelands. We've been doing our best to get a little more organized, a little more professional, and we look to bring you that each and every week. There's a champion on this panel right now, Mr. Benjamin Hart, and a former champion, Mr. Dominic Jones, and maybe their paths will cross sooner rather than later again.
Maybe.
But for Ben and Dominic, I'm Sage, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening.